Good morning. My name is Ariel Tabson, and I am the Public Information Officer for the Tennessee Highway Safety Office. Welcome to Talking Traffic Safety. Today, we are airing live from the Tennessee Highway Safety Office's Facebook page. Feel free to explore this page for traffic safety information and resources. Today's episode will feature two speakers serving as subject matter experts. I will serve as your moderator by presenting topics and questions for our experts to discuss. If you would like to participate, please submit your questions in the comments section. Each question that I mentioned will appear on the screen below. If we don't get to your question during the show, email info@tntrafficsafety.org so we can answer you. Thank you for joining us. We're so excited to be here today. So let's go ahead and introduce the panel. Our first guest is Buddy Lewis, Director of the Tennessee Highway Safety Office.
Good morning, Ariel.
Good morning. Welcome, Buddy. Tell us about you and what you do.
Well, thank you, and it's a pleasure to be with everyone this morning, and it's a pleasure to be with Director Alan Poole out of Georgia too, and so I'm honored to be on this panel with him this morning. I am Buddy Lewis. I'm the Director of the Tennessee Highway Safety Office. I have been in this position for a little over a year. During my law enforcement career, I've been a Tennessee State Trooper, a sheriff of a county, and a chief of police of a city, all in West Tennessee. I have been here at this job now for a little, like I say, a little over a year. I'm excited about being here. I'm excited about our job as Tennessee Highway Safety. We provide funding to law enforcement agencies and communities across the state of Tennessee. We want to make certain that everybody understands traffic safety is public safety. And part of our jobs one of the things that we want to do is change the behavior of motorists across the state of Tennessee as it pertains to causes of crashes and fatality crashes and serious injury crashes. So that's the job of the Tennessee Highway Safety Office. Again, I'm honored to be here and look forward to participating in today's program.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction. Our second speaker is Alan Poole, Director of the Georgia Governor's Office of Highway Safety.
Good morning, Ariel, and good morning to my counterpart, Mr. Buddy Lewis from Tennessee. It is my honor to serve as the governor's representative to the NHTSA board. I'm a former Georgia State Trooper after 20 years of patrolling the roads of Georgia. I'm a past commission chair of a board of commissioner for almost 15 years. And I was so blessed and honored when Governor Brian Kemp called me and asked me if I would serve as the director of the Governor's Office of Highway Safety. So I get the opportunity, instead of locking people up, I have the opportunity to change drivers' behavior on the highways here in Georgia. And I'm so honored to be here. I'm glad you're hosting, Miss Ariel, this talk live so that Buddy and I can try to share some points with the listening audience about the safety of driving on the highways.
Thank you so much. Everyone, as you can see, today's episode is very special because we have representation not only from Tennessee, but also from the great Peach State of Georgia. So welcome, Director Poole. Welcome, Director Lewis. Let's go ahead and jump into the discussion. The Christmas holiday season is one of the most highly traveled periods of the year. We know this because friends and family are spending time with each other and they're driving across the city or the county or even the state or other states to be able to celebrate in the festivities. And so some of these festivities and things that people are doing can tie into traffic safety and traffic safety issues. So, Buddy, tell us, what are common traffic safety issues this time of year?
Thank you, Ariel. Some of the most common issues that we are seeing and we have seen in the past this time of year. One is impaired driving. When people go to parties or celebrations or whatever, they may have a little bit too much to drink, and they'll get in a car and drive. That is a major issue this time of year. Speeding has become a major issue as well. We have seen over the last several months an increased amount of speeding taking place. Excessive speeds are taking place across the state of Tennessee, and I'm sure across the country as well. Seatbelt usage is very important this time of year because it's so many people who may think that they don't need to really buckle up if they're going down the street to visit a neighbor or whatever, but it's very important to buckle up. And also pedestrian safety is a great issue this time of year because it's so many people out shopping, walking to and from their car and parking lots and shopping center lots, malls and things of that nature, crossing the street. So those are the main issues that we see this time of year. And it's more volume of traffic out right now because a lot of people are out moving around, going from place to place. So those are some of the things that we hope to take care of and to minimize during this time of year with the various campaigns that we will be going through.
Thank you for sharing that. Oh, good morning, Tony Burnett. Thank you for that comment. And also thank you, Shandy Smith, for your comment earlier this morning, kicking us off. It's great to have some participation from the public. Thank you, Director Buddy Lewis. That's a lot of information for us to kick off with. Let's go ahead and start with speeding. So, Alan, can you tell us why speeding is such an issue right now, especially maybe for you in Georgia?
Yes, ma'am. I think one of the causes for excessive speeding that we've seen over the last several months is because of COVID-19. Less people are traveling and they are paying attention to the CDC regulations to stay at home and not get on the roadway unless you need to be. And I believe because of that mere fact, it has lowered the volume of traffic on the interstates and the highways. And because of that, I believe that's opened the door to more erratic driving. People are taking more chances. When you take a chance to do things and you equate that with high speeds, I think it leads to more crashes and injuries. So because of the COVID-19 epidemic, I think we've seen lower traffic volumes, but more erratic driving behavior.
Thank you, Alan. I think that we've all noticed that. Good morning, Jason Ivy. He's saying, welcome, Georgia, a great partner of Tennessee. Yes, they are. Yes. Within our region here in the Southeast, Georgia has been one of the best in working with us. So we're very happy to have them. Buddy, let me ask you, why is speeding so dangerous?
Well, speeding is, first of all, I agree with what Alan had to say about the early on during the pandemic, we saw a less volume of traffic on our roadways, which made some people, drivers, feel like that if it's less traffic, they can go faster. So I totally agree with what Alan had to say about all of that. Bottom line is speeding is, we've seen excessive speeds. There has been more triple digit speeds recorded across the country during the pandemic, more than ever. So bottom line is speeding drivers are almost 3 times more likely to be involved in a fatal or serious injury crash. That ought to drivers ought to take note of that and realize that, the faster you go, the more serious the crash is going to be. Speeding threatens the safety of everyone around you, not just you and your passengers, but vehicles that you're passing, vehicles that you're approaching are more put in more danger by your excessive speed. It lowers your reaction time. Speeding, you're not going to stop as quickly as if you're going 40 miles an hour, than if you're going 70 miles an hour. It increases the risk of losing control of your vehicle. And the bottom line is it reduces the effectiveness of the equipment, the safety equipment that your car has, the seat belts, all the airbags and things of that nature. It reduces that effectiveness if you're driving excessive high speeds. So when you talk about speed limits, it's not necessarily, that does not necessarily mean that you've got to go that speed. When they issue speed limits, it involves engineering aspects of it, and that roadway is put on the speed limit by how the safety of that roadway was built, and the whole idea of the speed limit is to protect you. So we just encourage people to drive safely, drive the speed limit, reduce your speeds, and drive safely.
Those are all really important points. And I think that, oh, good morning. Hello to our friends in Tennessee. Thank you, Robert Heydrich. He is actually the Director of Communications for the Georgia Office of Highway Safety. So great partner of ours as well. Thank you for checking in. Yeah, a lot of people don't think that speeding is a big deal, that you could just drive, take ownership of the road, and it doesn't really matter, but you don't realize you affect everyone around you with the choices you make on the road. So that's really good things to know. James Stinson, hello from Gallatin Police Department. Thank you for checking in. Oh, goodness. Katie Fallon from Georgia Office of Highway Safety. Awesome. Thank you for checking in. Thank you for your comments. Alan, let's shift gears and talk about pedestrians. Like Buddy had mentioned before, pedestrian safety is an issue right now. So how can pedestrians stay safe while holiday shopping?
Well, thank you for that question, Ariel. I believe at some point we all, like Buddy alluded to, we all are pedestrians at some point, whether walking to or from a vehicle to go to a store to do your shopping. One of the things that I would recommend to anybody outside the vehicle is to make sure you make eye contact with a driver of a vehicle so that they will understand your intent. If your intent is to cross the street, make sure that you make eye contact with that person. Make sure that if you're in a parking lot and if someone's about to back out of a parking space, make sure you get their attention so that they know that you're about to cross in front or behind them. And so I want to encourage everybody that's walking, you've got to make contact with the driver of a vehicle. Secondly, if it's at night, make sure you got on some reflective or light clothes so that you can be seen. Those are just two important points that I'd like to bring out. Make sure you make eye contact. Make sure at night you got on some kind of light clothing so people can see you.
That's very true. It's very true. And oftentimes, even though a pedestrian has the right of way, it doesn't mean that the driver will necessarily see you or yield. So you have to make that eye contact. It's so important. Buddy, what should drivers, oh, good morning, Director Donahoe. This is the Assistant Commissioner for the Department of Safety and Homeland Security. Thank you for joining us. Yes. Buddy, what should drivers do to keep pedestrians safe?
Well, as Alan alluded to, every one of us are pedestrians at some point. And so pedestrians are vulnerable roadway users. And drivers have got to understand that. We must understand that and do our part to protect them in any way that we possibly can. And that includes reducing the speed limit, reducing speeds when you are in areas where pedestrians may be. More pedestrian fatalities occur in urban areas rather than rural areas. And that's naturally because in our cities where they have crosswalks and signals and things of that nature, it's more pedestrians that are walking to and from crossing streets and roadways. So the bottom line is our drivers need to be alert and not distracted. They need to keep their eyes on the roadway and not texting, not doing anything out of line when they're in areas where pedestrians may be more likely to be crossing. A staggering statistic that we have found from 2018 is involving alcohol. Approximately 50%, is 48% of all fatal pedestrian crashes have involved alcohol for either the driver or the pedestrian. So that just tells us that bottom line is if you're driving, you don't need to be drinking. If you're walking, you don't need to be drinking because it could cost you your life. And we must pay attention and drive sober if we're driving, but always remember that the pedestrians have a right to use our system and our roadways in proper crossing areas just as much as we have a right to drive our vehicles.
Those are really good points. And I don't think that most people would think about that, about paying attention to a pedestrian that might be impaired, as in the same way that you would think about a driver. So that's definitely something to consider. Alan, is drunk driving prevalent during the holidays?
Yes, it is. And the reason it's so prevalent during the holidays, we are entering a time where we're celebratory with friends and family, and maybe this is the first time in a few months or the first time this year that we have this opportunity to visit with friends and family, and we're more prone to take a drink of a alcoholic beverage during this time because we're glad to see friends and family. And even during the day, we may be prone to take a early drink of some alcoholic beverage. So I would just encourage everybody, if you're gonna celebrate with some alcoholic beverage, whether it's at 10 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the evening, be aware that you should not get behind the wheel of a vehicle, nor get out on the street where you may be too impaired to walk. So like Buddy alluded to, it's our responsibility, not only as the motoring public, but as pedestrians as well, is to share the roadway with friends and families, and don't drink and get behind the wheel of a vehicle.
Oh, all right. Well, good morning, Kim Van Atta. She says, thank you very much for emphasizing pedestrian safety. Yes, it's very important. And we know that we've had very high fatality numbers for pedestrians across the nation. We also know that people might be drinking a little bit more just because it's 2020 and it's COVID and it's been hard for a lot of people. And so we want to make sure everybody is doing what they need to be doing as far as abiding by the laws. Alan, can you share a story about a significant drunk driving crash that happened in Georgia?
Yes, ma'am. I can give you a personal testimonial. Many years ago, when I was a state trooper, I was sitting on the ramp observing traffic. A impaired driver passed me. He hit my vehicle and 4 other vehicles as we sat on the shoulder waiting to merge on to the interstate. And just so happened it was during the holiday season, and I had a coworker not far from me, and he had the opportunity to get that vehicle pulled over before something really serious happened, which was serious enough for me because it totally destroyed my vehicle, and I couldn't do my job because I was inoperable sitting on the side of the road because he had struck me in 4 of the vehicles. So I just like to say, when you feel like you can Don't make that decision. Every decision is preventable. Just don't get behind of a vehicle if you're impaired, whether it's alcoholic beverage or drugs or prescription medicine. We in law enforcement, we feel like if you're less safe than drive and you don't have to meet the state guideline of 0.08, we feel in law enforcement, if we can determine that you're less safe to be operating a vehicle, we can get you off the road. And so I just want to stress that. Not living up to the state limit, but if you're impaired, and that's the discretion of a law enforcement officer.
Thank you for sharing that story. I'm sure it was very terrifying to go through that experience. I mean, because it's something so unexpected. Buddy, is drunk driving an issue in Tennessee as well?
Yes, it is, Ariel. It's a major issue in Tennessee as well. As Alan alluded to earlier, during the holidays particularly, there may be parties that people go to during the daytime. There may be events take place that people have one drink or two drinks and they leave and think they're okay to get into the car and drive. But yes, DUI and drunk driving is an issue in Tennessee, not just for the public, but for law enforcement as well. Bottom line is several months ago here in Tennessee, we had a police officer from Brentwood killed by a drunk driver as he was about to get off work, ended his shift. He was driving back to his headquarters and about to get off, and he was hit by a drunk driver and was killed. We want to make certain that people understand that drunk drivers can be on the road day and night. It does not necessarily have to be at night. So that's why it's so important that we drive defensively. We watch out for other drivers. We look for things that may give indication that someone may be an impaired driver, and pick up the phone and call 911 or whatever. If you see something, say something. So we just want to make certain that everybody understands that, it's okay to report someone that may be impaired, because it could be the life of a friend of yours or a loved one of yours that you may save if you do so.
You brought up a very interesting point. So I want to ask you an additional question, because this may be on the minds of other people. I know that citizens do see and witness other drunk drivers on the road and want to do something about it. And even if they do call 911, what information do they need to provide? Do they need to say the driver's license tag number or the color vehicle? Like, what should a citizen actually do to be able to report that?
Yes, that's a very good question, and information that we really need to get out. First of all, if you're on your cell phone in Tennessee, if you dial star THP, that will get your closest THP dispatch center. Then when you make that contact, either with that or the dispatch in your area, you just give them a vehicle description, a place where, a location where that vehicle is. I encourage people to follow that vehicle at a safe distance. Do not put yourself in jeopardy if you're following that car, to report additional information about location or where that vehicle is turning or whatever. Stay a safe distance away. But it is so very important to give a tag number, vehicle description, and location. And if you can do that, then you're doing your part to possibly save a life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Alan, in Georgia, is there a particular number or maybe besides 911 that a citizen can call to report something like this?
Yes, it is. 511. That's the information that you can dial anywhere in the state of Georgia as you are traveling down the highway to report a suspicious impaired driver, and I applaud traffic wrecks or anything. And I applaud Buddy for bringing to my attention, it is imperative that you give a location so that the nearest officer can lend some assistance, and do try to give a description of the vehicle.
Good, good. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure that's going to be very helpful for a lot of people. There was one more thing before we move on that I wanted to ask Buddy. I know that previously in conversation, you had mentioned that you yourself were struck by a drunk driver. Do you want to share that story with us?
Well, yes, I talked about the situation one time when I was a trooper and I was working a crash on Highway 51 just north of Memphis. And it was a gas fuel tanker that had run off the road and laid over on its side, and we had the roadway shut down, and a drunk driver came and ran into my marked state trooper vehicle. We had the lights on, we had all kind of lights, flashing lights, blue lights flashing, and the drunk driver kind of did a lot of damage to my vehicle. Fortunately, I was not in the vehicle. I was outside the vehicle looking at the situation and trying to get traffic around the crash site, but it did crash into my drunk driver did crash into my marked vehicle. And again, fortunately, I was not inside. I was not injured.
Thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's just a good point to reinforce that not only citizens are in danger when it comes to drunk drivers, but also law enforcement who are out on the roads trying to keep everyone safe. Let's just talk about a couple more things with drunk driving, then we'll move on. Alan, what is drive sober or get pulled over in Georgia?
That's one of our major campaigns for the year. We have a news conference starting right before Thanksgiving, the 6 weeks from Thanksgiving to New Year's. That's when we increase our enforcement hours. We partner with local sheriff, your local police department, so that we can really enforce what we believe is viewing the drivers during that time to ascertain whether or not they are impaired in any kind of way, whether it's any alcohol, drugs, or prescription medicine. We have road blocks so that we can view those impaired drivers, as well as making sure people are buckled up during this time. So that 6 weeks between Thanksgiving and New Year's, you will see an increase in enforcement activity. And that's your warning when we have our news conference. You don't get warnings during this time. If you're impaired in any kind of way, you could lose your privileges to drive. It could cost you up way beyond tens of thousands of dollars. And God forbid that you don't kill yourself or someone else. So we just want to encourage everyone that these decisions are decisions that you make, and every decision that you make could lead to something catastrophic. So don't get behind the wheel of a vehicle, because it is preventable if you just make the right decision and not get behind the wheel of that vehicle.
Thank you. We know that Drive Sober or Get Pulled Over is a national mobilization. So law enforcement all across the country are going to be cracking down on drunk driving. Buddy, tell us, what is Booze It and Lose It for Tennessee?
Thank you, Ariel. And absolutely, I agree with Alan of what he said. It is every DUI crash is preventable. It is a conscious decision that a driver who was drinking decided to drive, and so that makes that crash preventable. So I echo what Alan said, and I appreciate him bringing that up as well. Booze It and Lose It in Tennessee is a campaign that we term the same basic drive sober, get pulled over. It's the basic type campaign where it puts more officers on the roadway across the state. And let me just say this, we could not do our job in Tennessee. The Tennessee Highway Safety Office could not do our job effectively in Tennessee without our local law enforcement partners. Our local law enforcement across the state are unbelievable when it comes to doing things that need to be done during special campaigns and doing their jobs every day. So for those of you all who are connected to local law enforcement, sheriff's offices, police departments across the state, we thank you so much for allowing us to work with you, because you are the eyes and the ears and you are the feet on the ground when it comes to making our roadways safe, just like the Tennessee Highway Patrol is across the state of Tennessee. So I just want to say thank you to those officers that are out there. They set up high visibility enforcement areas, they saturation patrols, sobriety checkpoints, all things that you would think about getting people off the road that are drinking and driving. People don't realize how important our local law enforcement is to our campaigns and our efforts. So I want to say thank you to that. And they do a great job as part of Booze It and Lose It. So to our local law enforcement, we appreciate your partnership very, very much.
Awesome. That's really good information to know so that people understand what law enforcement's role is and what they do to keep us safe. Roger Hayes, thanks to you all for this great program. He's with the Georgia Governor's Office of Highway Safety as well. Thank you for checking in with us. Oh, anyone driving in Georgia can call 511 if you are having mechanical or equipment problems with your vehicle. Vehicles stalled on interstate and state maintained roads, dangerous road conditions, and other issues. Thank you for sharing that. And everyone pay attention to the comments because there's a lot of good information and tips in there. Alan, I know that I've heard very often about people who are drunk feeling like it's a good idea to take a break and sleep in their car to try to sober up before they drive home. Why shouldn't you take a nap in your vehicle if you're drunk?
Well, Ariel, thank you for that question. That's a great question because a lot of people are under the assumption that if you pull over to try to sleep it off, it's okay. But it's not okay in Georgia. If you're behind the wheel of a vehicle and the keys are in the ignition, we feel like at one point you've operated, or you could wake up and operate that vehicle. So just because you're pulled over and you're asleep does not mean that you're not responsible for that vehicle being where it is. So just don't assume that because you're not operating the vehicle at that particular time, you're okay. That's not the point. If you're behind the wheel and you're asleep and the keys are in ignition, you've got a good chance to go to jail and lose your privilege to drive on the highways of Georgia.
Okay, so then essentially that could be a DUI. Buddy, what does the law say in Tennessee?
Ariel, the law in Tennessee is very, very similar to that in Georgia. If the key wordage is in the state law in Tennessee is if you're in control of that vehicle, and if you're behind the wheel, whether you're asleep or awake, you've been drinking, the keys are in ignition, you're by law in control of that vehicle. So it's the same in Tennessee as it is in Georgia. You can be charged with a DUI if you've been drinking. Even if you're asleep, you can still be charged with it if those are the circumstances behind it.
That's good to know. That's really good to know. Let's kind of talk a little bit more about this in the sense of medications. Buddy, what should people know about mixing their medications with alcohol?
Well, first of all, a lot of prescriptions that you get, it's a lot of people that think that if you have medications prescribed by a doctor, even if it says do not drive or do not operate machinery or whatever, if it's prescribed by a doctor, it's okay for you to drive. That's not the case at all. If you're prescribed medications and it says do not mix with alcohol or do not drive, that's a violation of the law. So the bottom line is, if you are drinking, you're taking medication, maybe this time of year, especially, you may not think that it's, one or two drinks won't hurt you at a holiday party or something, but it is very serious to mix medications and alcohol. And it carries the same punishment. It carries the same weight as a DUI if you're just drinking. So medications and alcohol do not mix. And so that's why they put the warnings on the medications to start with, is to provide you that information that you should not drink and drive. So we just ask that everyone that may be taking some type of medication during the holiday season or year round, just do not mix it with alcohol, because it stands to reason that it's going to react differently, and it's going to cause different set of problems for you, rather than just the normal reaction that you would get if you take the medication alone.
Ariel, may I add to what Buddy had to say? And Buddy, I want to thank you for those comments. I want everybody to understand that a doctor is a doctor and a judge is a judge. And just because you've got a prescription, a medication, that's not a free pass or get out of jail card because it was written by a medical doctor. If you're less safe to drive because you impaired in some way by medicine or medication, you're still less safe to drive. So don't assume because you've got a prescription bottle of medicine, it's okay for you to drive. That is not the case. And I want to thank Buddy for bringing that up, that this is not a free get out of jail card for you.
Right.
Yeah, thank you for going into detail on that, because that's definitely something that a lot of people don't think about when they think about a DUI and the consequences of that. We know that when you drink and you're impaired, you tend to ignore other traffic safety laws as well, including seatbelt use. We know that if you're going to be drunk or impaired, it's less likely you're going to put it on when you get in the car. So let's talk about it. Buddy, why is seatbelt use so important?
Ariel, one of the main reasons that seatbelt usage is so important is that you have only a 50% chance of surviving a crash if you are not wearing a seatbelt. So if you're in a crash that's a significant crash, your 50% chance of surviving that are in place. And all you have to do is buckle up to increase that percentage to surviving. If you don't wear a seatbelt, you can be ejected from the vehicle, which can cause more serious injury to you. It can cause serious injury to passengers in the car, because if you're not buckled up, you can be thrown around inside the vehicle and hit other passengers that may be buckled up. It's the most effective thing that you can do to protect yourself in a crash is wear a seatbelt. And sometimes people think that it's okay not to wear a seatbelt just to run down to the corner market to get a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread. But most crashes happen within 25 miles of your home. So just always remember that you should buckle your seatbelt every time, everywhere you go. Buckle your seatbelt. Make it a habit of doing so. And the last thing I want to say in regard to this is it's so important for parents to lead the way for their children, to make certain that they're the example that their children need to have in buckling up, because your children are going to do the same thing that you do when you get into a car, and that's true even with drinking. A lot of people may think it's okay for a parent to be driving in a car and sipping on a glass of wine or driving or whatever, but your children are going to see what you do, and they're more likely to do that. So it's more likely that your children will not buckle up if you don't, as a parent, wear your seatbelt. So please increase the life of your child by buckling up yourself and making sure your children are buckled up as well.
Ariel, can I add one thing to that?
Please do.
I want to emphasize the importance, like Buddy just referenced. You're 50% more likely to survive a crash if you're buckled up inside what we in law enforcement consider that square box. That square box will save your life. It will keep you from being ejected from a vehicle. It will keep you from bumping around inside that vehicle like a ping pong ball. So let me just stress what Buddy just referenced to. Buckle your seatbelt so that you can be stationary and not bounce around like a ping pong ball or be projected outside of that vehicle where you could hit a object, or you will be the vehicle can roll over and crush you. So yes, pay attention to what Buddy said. You're 50% more likely to survive if you're buckled up in that vehicle.
Alan, what can happen if a child is not properly restrained in the vehicle?
There's a good question again, Ariel. I remember as a state trooper, I had worked a crash where it involved a mother and 2 or 3 kids, and they were in safety seats, but they were not properly buckled up. And 2 of the children didn't make it through the crash, but they were in safety seats. But because of the lack of being properly buckled up in that seat, they were thrown outside of the vehicle and they lost their life. And so let me encourage, we have training stations throughout the state of Georgia. We at the Governor's Office of Highway Safety, we have virtual training. Our staff, they can, you can go online with them and they can instruct you how to buckle your child up. And so it's important, not only are children, they are our most important commodity. And it's important for them to be properly secured inside that vehicle as well, properly, just not in a safety seat, but they need to be trained how to be buckled up in that seat, in that vehicle as well.
Thank you for sharing that. It's really important for parents to know the right seat for their kid, to make sure that it's the right size and that they're buckled in properly, and all of the child passenger safety laws that go with that. During COVID, we know it's been hard for a lot of people and not knowing if there are resources available. So it's good to know that there are, that you can virtually meet with a technician or set an appointment to be able to check and make sure that seat is correctly installed. So thank you for sharing that. And I know we have those same services in Tennessee. We have time for just maybe a couple more questions, but I think it's important to keep talking about child safety. Buddy, what are some child passenger safety tips specifically for winter?
Yes, this time of year, of course, people, first of all, every time you get into the car with your child, buckle up, buckle them in that child safety seat. That's imperative that you do that every trip, every time, no matter how short the trip is. But during the winter time, a lot of times parents will put a heavy coat on the child and then put the child in a car seat. We discourage that because the bottom line is that thickness of that coat will interfere with the effectiveness of the harness that will protect your child from being moved around in that car seat. So we suggest that parents don't put heavy coats on, but maybe thin layers of clothing on there to keep them warm. Even put a blanket over them, put a heavy coat over them, sitting in the seat, but do not allow them to wear the coat. First of all, never leave your child unattended in a vehicle too. We want to make certain that people know that they should not leave their child in that car at any time alone. Is the main thing is the safety of the child. And most car seats that you get, particularly if they're new in the box, they will give you safety instructions as well. But follow those instructions. But during the wintertime especially, do not put a heavy coat on your child and then put them in the car seat, because that reduces the effectiveness of the car seat itself.
Those are really good tips to know about keeping your child safe in the winter. Things that people may not necessarily think about. Let's see. Our last question I'm going to give to Alan before we wrap up. And what I want to ask you is, let's talk about distracted driving. That's what we'll finish on, because we know it's such a major problem, So Alan, what is considered distracted driving?
Here in Georgia, it's one of our laws that you not hold a cell phone in your hand, or if it's touching any part of your body. So as a prior law enforcement officer, it's imperative that you're attentive when you're behind the wheel of a vehicle because of reaction time. I mean, if you're running 50 miles an hour, you have the ability to travel 3 football fields before you can realize what's going on. So I would encourage you, stay off your phone. Don't text while you're driving. Pay attention to the road and your surroundings, because it could be someone walking, someone riding a bicycle, some activity with another driver. Buddy alluded to earlier in the conversation, you've got to drive not only for yourself, but watch out for the other driver as well, so that you become a defensive driver. And so it's important that you stay with your attention focused on driving and not being distracted by something else going on around you or in the vehicle.
Those are really good points. You mentioned that Georgia has a hands-free law, and we do as well here in Tennessee, where you cannot have your phone in your hand for any reason while you're driving, or any part of your body. Got to put it down. And that's really important. And we know that distracted driving is more than that. We know that it could be grooming, makeup, any form of multitasking. I know, especially us women, we think that we can do it all behind the wheel. We can do our hair, we can do our lashes, do our lipstick, and look in the rearview mirror and get it all done and think you won't crash. And that's just not the case. It's very extremely dangerous. So thank you for mentioning that. This is pretty much winding up our show for today. So let's go ahead and conclude. This concludes our episode of Talking Traffic Safety. We really appreciate everyone being here. I would like to thank our special guests for joining us today. We have Director Buddy Lewis from the Tennessee Highway Safety Office, and then we have Director Alan Poole from the Georgia Governor's Office of Highway Safety. Thank you so much for being here. First, I want to ask Alan, do you have any closing remarks that you would like to give?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you again, Ariel, for hosting such a great conversation. I enjoyed the conversation with Buddy. He and I both come from the same background. And during this unusual time, 2020 has been such an unusual time for us all here in America and around the world. With that said, we'll get through this and we'll get through it together. But as we travel this holiday season, visiting with friends and family, I want to encourage you to make the right decision, the smart decision, and that is not to get behind the wheel of a vehicle if you've been sharing some good times with friends and family and it involved any kind of alcoholic beverage. So please, as we go through Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, be smart. Don't get behind of a vehicle, and have a happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. Thank you again for hosting us, Ariel.
Thank you so much. Buddy, what final comments do you have?
Thank you, Ariel, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to work with Alan. We have met several times together. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to do that lately, but we appreciate very much the partnership that the Tennessee Highway Safety Office has with the Georgia office. We have some great partnerships there. We discuss things a lot. We have common problems and issues that we talk about. And so thank you, Alan, for being a part of this. It's been an honor to be with you today. My message to the people in Tennessee and Georgia is to be smart during the holiday season. Do things that you know will not cause anyone any excessive danger on the roadways. Don't drive impaired. Always buckle your seatbelt. Slow down, drive the speed limit, drive according to what the law requires you to drive, and watch out for pedestrians. Those are the things that I want to key on this holiday season to the motorist in Tennessee. You know, in the state of Tennessee, we are known as the volunteer state. And so we ask the people of our state to volunteer their efforts to make our roadways safe for everyone. We really need to pay attention to one another, to drive defensively, to watch out, but be smart in the decisions that you make. And that's the wish that we have in the Tennessee Highway Safety Office to our citizens across the state of Tennessee, is to drive smart, be safe, do the right thing. If you need us, contact us. We're here for you, and we're happy to serve you in any way that we can. We enjoy our partnerships with our local law enforcement and our communities, our attorneys general offices across the state, where we have DUI prosecutors. We just enjoy those partnerships, working with one another to save lives in the state of Tennessee. So that's all I have to say. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Tennessee Tech, for allowing us to do this and to working this behind the scenes. We appreciate it very much, and getting the message out to drive safe and have a great holiday season.
It's a really good message. And wrapping up, I wanted to reemphasize one thing you mentioned, because we've never given credit for Tennessee Tech University on the show before, but their media center, the IQ, is their employees are the ones who help run this show and function it for us. And they're behind the scenes right now as producers, making sure everything is running successfully. So thank you, Tennessee Tech. Thank you very much, the Georgia Office of Highway Safety and the Tennessee Highway Safety Office as well. And everyone, thank you for joining us today. If we didn't get to a question that you had during the show, please email info@tntrafficsafety.org, because we'd love to answer you and love to talk to you. Everyone, please have safe holiday. Let's end 2020 on a good note. Let's restart in 2021. Keep these traffic fatality numbers low, and let's save lives. Let's save lives. So take care and drive safe.